All right, boys and girls, let's go ahead and revisit the 88-day thing. What's up, Wolverines? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about the 88-day automatic denial thing with the NFA and how it affects pistol braces. Also, this is the second part. I have more information. I talked to the ATF. I want to go over what it actually is because there's a lot of misconceptions about that, how it applies to you. Also, the two competing schools of thoughts. And I'm going to lay everything out and I'm going to let you decide. But before we get into that, let's go ahead and clear up some misconceptions. A lot of people think that when somebody said that there will be a automatic denial after 88 days, they are talking about the e-form process. That is not what it is. During the e-form process, when you submit your form, the ATF will contact the FBI to run a NICS background check. It is the same background check that you get ran when you buy a gun. And the ATF has 88 days to complete that check. If they don't complete that check within 88 days, it gets returned open and all records get purged. It is one of the steps in the form process, but it is not from when you submit your form. So when the ATF submits it to the FBI to run it, that's when the clock starts. It gets returned open if it's not done within 80 days, basically. Okay, so under the GCA, after 3 days, the FFL can transfer a gun to you. So if your background check comes back open after 80 days and it's just a regular gun purchase, you would never know because the transfer would happen. It's an automatic transfer. Under the NFA, that background check has to come back. So if it comes back open, your application is rejected. And I confirmed that with the ATF. I talked to Eric Longnecker over at the ATF, and he is on the record as confirming that. I also have documentation of people actually getting their applications rejected for this reason, even though they did not have a criminal background and there was nothing to stop them from getting a firearm. Stephen Stambole, who is an attorney for GOA, approached the ATF and asked them what would happen if this happened under the pistol brace thing, because usually you do not have possession of the firearm because you haven't made it yet. With pistol braces, you already have possession of the firearm. The ATF agent there allegedly told Stambolier that they would take an enforcement action. I talked to one well-known influencer that was actually in the booth when that happened, and he verified that it did happen. So we have Stephen Stambolier saying that it did happen, which I believe Stephen, and we also have a very, very well-respected member of the gun community who also was in the booth when that was said. But it's a little bit deeper than that because I'm going to talk about what Matt LaRosa said. I talked to Matt LaRosa about this, and he pointed out correctly that they cannot use anything on the e-forms that you submit against you criminally, which is technically true, but it depends on how much you trust the ATF. From GOA's standpoint, they don't trust the ATF to do the right thing at all because there's a history of abuse in the ATF. For example, the frames and receivers rule. They said one thing, then they said another thing, and then they said the same thing again. So they went back and forth, back and forth. They are basically schizophrenic. What I'm talking about is originally you couldn't sell blanks. Then in court they said you could. And then a day after Christmas, they said you couldn't again. So it's kind of like a schizophrenic, bipolar type thing with the ATF. I don't really get it. So GOA points that out. Matt LaRosa doesn't think this is a big deal because it returns open and not rejected. But your NFA form is rejected according to the ATF. I spoke with them, And they said if it is rejected, you can always resubmit, even if it's after the 120 days. But before you resubmit, you have to fix whatever problem was with the FBI, and you have to contact the FBI to do that. The ATF provided me documentation on how to contact the FBI. Unfortunately, the link in the documentation to contact the FBI to get it fixed didn't work. I was able to examine the link and find out that there's a white space. A white space is basically just a blank space, and the URL that they provided, I was able to go ahead and fix that. But that is in the official document, so if you need to fix it, just be aware that the link in the official document does not work. Okay, so Matt LaRosa claims that it's less than a 1% chance of a background check getting to the open stage after 88 days and an NFA application being rejected because of that. Looking at ATF and FBI internal documents that I got in a FOIA a while back, this was a couple years ago actually, about 2020, it was actually 2019. It was about a 2.2% rejection rate. So it's a little bit higher than 1%. There's also an NBC article that actually backs that up. So I don't know what the percentage is now, but it's probably a little bit higher just because the amount of guns being purchased has went up. So is this a big deal? I'm not really sure, because there's also a CLEO thing. CLEO is Chief Law Enforcement Officer. When you submit your NFA application, the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of your area is notified. Now you have a rejected NFA form, which means you have an unregistered SBR in the eyes of the ATF and law enforcement, which could lead to enforcement action by them. Would any of that stick? I don't think that it would. So I do think that you would end up getting off. It just depends on how much time, money, and effort is wasted on getting off. So I don't think either side, the GOA or Fudd Busters, is wrong. I just think it's two different perspectives, and it comes down to how much you trust your local law enforcement officers and how much you trust the ATF to do what is right and legal. So you're going to have to decide for yourself. All right, that is basically it for me. Stay ever vigilant, stay ever free, keep in the fight. I am out of here. Tomorrow night, we will be having a live stream to raise money for Hoff, which is Richard Hoffman, who is in pretty bad shape. All right, guys. Wolverines, mother.